Okay. For our first learning series session, we are thrilled to be taking a look at what current arts leadership programs tell us about the needs of the field and how to design leadership development programs that empower BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color arts administrators. This session has been designed as a dialogue between me, our panelists, and you. Eric will be peppering the chat with questions for you to answer as we negotiate this discussion, and we encourage you to answer in the chat. We'll be checking the chat frequently to see what you have to say. To get the conversation started, let's meet our panelists and hear what they've been up to. First, we have Dana Payne, Director of DEI Initiatives, Diverse Cultures, and Heritage at the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. Dana, what you got cooking over there?
Oh, I've got lots. Hold on one second. Just have some little, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, wait, I don't know if that's, hold on. I'm sorry, I need to make sure that is the correct screen. Now, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, NASAA, for inviting me to participate in this afternoon session. I am Dana Payne. I'm Director of DEI Initiatives, Diverse Cultures and Heritage for the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. I'm responsible for the grant opportunities and resources offered by our Folk and Traditional Arts Program, our nationally recognized Preserving Diverse Cultures Division, as well as working to help guide our agency in the development and implementation of comprehensive DEI initiatives. The Pennsylvania Council on the Arts currently supports and empowers BIPOC arts administrators through our Strategies for Success capacity building program. Strategies for Success is a multi-year, multi-level capacity building program designed to address, and oh wait, I just want you guys to see our administrators, designed to address and support organizational leadership development for BIPOC arts and cultural administrators and organizations. We do this through implementation awards, technical assistance, long-term consultation, and professional development workshops and conferences. In the past, in addition to Strategies for Success, we supported BIPOC arts administrators through our arts management enterprise program and our arts internship program. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm looking forward to what everyone else has to ask and contribute. Thank you very much, and I will hand the virtual microphone back to Marisa.
Thank you so much, Dana. Our second panelist is Vice President of Programs for South Arts. Hi, Joy. Tell us what's going on with South Arts.
Well, it would be helpful if I unmuted myself. Hello, Marisa, can you tell me if you can see the screen?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm again Joy Young with South Arts, and I'm Vice President for Programs. I want to acknowledge that we are led by an amazing board, President and CEO, Susie Serkimer, and the work that we're doing couldn't happen without our amazing staff. As Vice President of Programs, I am responsible for roughly 19 programs. I will discuss a bit about our work in DEIA through a program called Emerging Leaders of Color that happens in partnership with WESTAF. But let me get started. So I'm going to use a metaphor, if you will, having our work happen as if we were watering a lawn, if you will. So I'll talk about the needs of the field, a little bit about what South Arts is doing, and a little bit about how state arts agencies can further strengthen their leadership pipelines. So the hose represents our pipeline, right? Our grass represents a healthy arts field. And what work needs to happen? Well, we have got to move away from this grass that's not quite happy. And in fact, I just want to make sure you know that this is considered, this kind of grass is drought stressed fescue. That's what you're looking at. Well, why is that important? Because the reality is, as some of you know, there are different kinds of grass out there, and our field is so incredibly diverse until we need to make sure that the leaders that we're bringing forward represent that diversity. And we need to make sure that we're doing those things that make sure that that pipeline is loose, to make sure that that pipeline is open and that our grass stays green and doesn't get dry. So what is South Arts doing? Well, we have, again, a leadership program that is happening in partnership with WESTAF, and we provide a range of opportunities for leaders to network, to understand the field. We also give opportunities for cohort building. What I will say very specifically about our work with emerging leaders of color, we were very intentional in this cohort to speak to what it means to lead in the South. And, you know, the South has images of oppression, specifically Confederate monuments, visual terrorism. We talked about and acknowledged that paternalism is ever present in the South, that Southern hospitality can be a mask for Southern hostility. Our program intentionally spoke about the ways majority-led organizations place barriers. They, you know, keep that pipeline from flowing. How majority-led organizations can give excuses because as leaders, especially leaders of color, it was so important for us in our Emerging Leaders of Color program to recognize what is before us. It was so important to make sure that emerging leaders could name what they were seeing and what they were experiencing, become a change maker, and let's be honest, if needed, subvert the barriers. Our program also introduced the concept of followership because let's be honest, leadership is not very effective without followership. So what can happen to strengthen the leadership pipeline? Well, certainly recognizing that there are already leaders in your pipeline. As you turn on the leadership faucet, remove barriers and bottlenecks of bureaucracy. Nourish each leader within your organization. They are, in fact, a blade of grass in an amazingly diverse field. And we want to make sure that we're giving leaders time and space to reach maturity. And I'll close with this, that every blade of grass has an angel that bends over it and whispers, grow, grow. And where there is not growth, I say to each individual leader, spread your wings and fly. And with that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. What a beautiful quote. I love that. I come from a family of quoters, so I'm going to have to put that one in my back pocket. And on to the dynamic Anika Kwinana, Director of Social Responsibility and Inclusion at Western States Arts Federation. Hi, Anika. What's going on?
Hi, Marisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Anika Kwinana. I'm the Director of Social Responsibility and Inclusion at WESTAF. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am zooming in from Piscataway and Nacotchunk land. I live in Arlington, Virginia. Grew up in Oakland, California, and so that is my connection to the West. But in this age of remote working, I am privileged to lead WESTAF's equity work, and I'm happy to see some of my colleagues here and friendly faces. So thank you, and some of our board members. So thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm actually going to zone in on our leaders, what has been called our Emerging Leaders and Leaders of Color program. And so this was established by WESTAF 12 years ago. And the goal was to really build cohorts of cultural leaders of color in the West. There was a recognition from the field that there was a gap, and what could WESTAF do to help fill it? There was thought around strengthening competencies and preparing these young leaders for the field, and then establishing networks, I would say lifelong career and collegial networks, and to represent their communities. And so in addition to this Emerging Leaders of Color program that typically is a 2 to 3 day program, has traditionally been in person, and the past few years has been virtual. After one sort of finishes the program, then you are automatically a part of the network. And we see that as ongoing relationship building and support for those cohorts. We have, I guess it's 13 cohorts by now, at least, of emerging leaders of color, what we call alumni. And so there's opportunities to share skill and knowledge, and of course, deepen relationships. And just to talk about the Emerging Leaders of Color program, what we have focused on are some key strategic areas. So in the 2 to 3 to sometimes 4 day intensive learning, the cohort will learn about policy and data in the arts, leadership development, self-care in times of change, how crucial that is now, and also community care, and then strategic foresight. And so we have a curriculum designer, wonderful, also faculty member who's been with us for some time, Salvador Acevedo, along with Margie Reese, two of our key mentors and faculty, and Joy Young also has joined us this past year. But our curriculum is an experiential one, and it has sort of 4 experiences that we focus on: validation, community, and you can see how we define those, and sort of the response of the participant when they obtain that skill or have that experience, and then enlightenment and accomplishment. And so there's a whole arc of learning that surrounds our approach. And what I want to share with you and take this moment to sort of advertise too is sort of our program expansion / what we have learned. We're rethinking some definitions and terms. For example, we've called it Emerging Leaders of Color. And what we've learned is these leaders are not emerging, they are leaders, full stop, right? Many folks of color have been leading small organizations or volunteer organizations, but they are leaders in their own right. And so emerging is a misnomer. And so we're looking at that. Another sort of term we want to look at, we talked about leadership development, but what we found at WESTAF is key is to invest rather than develop. And so I'm excited to say that on my team, there is an alumni from the program who is on staff. I think we have 5 folks on our staff that are from the program. We have folks on our board, on our board committees, and there is a continual relationship that we have going with cohorts. So that investment, not to just say you were a part of our program and now we can put your picture on our website. No, what are your needs over the life of your career and how can we support? And then we've looked at partnerships beyond the WESTAF region, like with South Arts. We first partnered with South Arts 2 years ago. And then this last year, partnered with them to run a South Arts cohort that they were very much more involved in dealing with the issues that Joy mentioned in terms of the South and what that experience is like. And from those lessons, we will be embarking on a national program that our hope is to pilot this fall. We're working really hard on this. And the idea is that each regional arts organization who's very excited about this will have X number of cohort members that will join this national program. And so some of you may be interested in that. I highly suggest you reach out to your regional organizations and ask them about this, push them on this so that you can know about those timelines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anika. I heard the three of you talk about what we can do to encourage our leaders of color, from investing in them and nourishing them. And so now we are going to shift into the meat of the session: questions, answers, and conversation. I'll kick it off with a question, but I really encourage you. We have such a dynamic group of panelists with us today. I really encourage you, audience, to please feel free to share your questions in the Zoom chat, and Eric will be sure to call them out. So I'm going to start with a question, and the question is for all three of you. The work that you all are doing is outstanding, and it does my heart so good to see three powerful women of color in leadership positions within the arts field. Over the past couple of years, especially since George Floyd's murder, many organizations have increased their DEI efforts to include hiring more people of color, and your programs are doing a phenomenal job preparing them for leadership roles. However, retention continues to be an issue. We all know that there is often an unfair division of time and workload within diverse work cultures, and on top of that, people of color continue to deal with racism and microaggressive behavior in the workplace. So we often leave in search of greener or more equitable pastures and pray that we find them. What internal conversations should organizations be having about retaining staff of color, specifically those in leadership positions? The staff of color in leadership positions really help to lift up the staff that are there, and then also bring in more staff of color. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that. And Joy, we'll start with you.
Coming off of mute, got to get to that mute button. I did speak to nourishing, but I would also just speak to the need to understand what is important to each of the leaders within your organization, that we remove, again, those kinds of barriers that keep people stymied and stuck. And for some who are within governmental organizations and as state arts agencies, well, we're governmental organizations, it's really questioning those kinds of policies that keep people in a particular place or position. Within our own work at South Arts, I'll be honest, we haven't figured it out, and we don't have it perfect either. We have embraced a hybrid work environment so that those individuals who need to have that balance of home and work life beyond the pandemic can in fact have those opportunities. Again, we don't have a perfect recipe at all. So I pass it over to Anika and ask Anika if she'd share her experiences.
Thanks, Joy. The first thing that came to mind, honestly, Marisa, is that hiring should not be performative, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned George Floyd, and we saw a lot of performative behavior since that time, and we won't go into all of that. But I think that's an important note, that it's not performative. It's not a tick off the box. We've done this, and we've let this person in. And I think it's really important to even talk about that we. When we say we, who are we talking about, right? Who is the we that is letting in or hiring? And where at the table are people of color, right? I think that one must understand, as we've shared already, that leadership already existed in folks, experience already existed in folks. And if your intent in hiring, like any other person you'd hire, that's particularly at the highest level, they have a particular vision, and they're not there to be a puppet or be told what to do, but they're there to lead, and they have a vision, they have a strategy. Just let them do their work. How about you, Dana? What are your thoughts?
All right. So my thoughts, just to build upon Joy and Anika's comments. One is, you have to, within an agency and organization, you have to create a culture of respect. And, that starts with leadership. So, at the top, it has to be, it's a sort of a top-down environment that you create. And it's about respect and acknowledgement. And I think that being a state agency, there are different tools that some agencies have, some may not to a certain extent, that would sort of help to, I don't want to say train, but I'm going to say train because that's what it is. But it sort of informs everyone about what inclusion means, what differences and what racial discrimination is, what helps to build and create and sustain a healthy and inclusive work environment. And I'll just stand by and say that, when you have the buy-in and support from leadership, then that helps BIPOC administrators succeed. If that administrator is listened to, you listen to what their needs are, what they need to do the work that they are hired to do. And that's what will keep people there, when they are heard and when they are supported and respected.
Agree, 100%. Thank you so much. Eric, do we have a couple of questions in the chat yet?
Unfortunately not, Marisa. So I'm going to encourage everyone to throw some questions up in the chat, and I'll ask you if you want to be live and answer your question yourself, or I can read it for you. So looking forward to some of those questions coming in soon, Marisa.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Okay, so I have another question for you, for the panel. Culture wars are real. There's a lot of discussion about culture wars right now, north, south, east, west. Some states may find difficulty in creating BIPOC-focused programs that appear restrictive, as in limited eligibility. Have you encountered any legal challenges or reverse discrimination issues in planning and implementing your programs?
I'll jump in and just share that we've not experienced legal challenges, but we certainly are working hard to not be prescriptive. The idea that you have to be a certain age versus experience level. We have folks that are coming into this field from other careers and have a passion for the arts and want to contribute to the field. So that was one area we shifted as we partnered with WESTAF for our emerging leaders of color, removing an age barrier. We've not had any of those other experiences you've spoken to, Marisa.
Thank you, Joy. Dana, Anika?
Yeah, I'll just pop in that since I've been at WESTAF, which is just shy of a year, I personally haven't had any legal challenges. I'm not sure that WESTAF has had legal challenges, but there's definitely been some passive aggressive emails that have come through, right? But at the same time, there's also been supportive emails. We see what you're doing and we support what you're doing. And I think it just comes back to this notion of equity and equality. Like equity and equality are not the same thing. They just have never been. And when we talk about equity, we're talking about folks who have not had the same level of access, right? And so that's just going to mean a very particular thing. And so if we want to, yeah, that's just the reality. And I think, I'm not sure that we can really grasp that. I have to say, working over the West region or WESTAF's region, which is so expansive, right? And I'm quite sure other regions and you all who are from state arts agencies experience it in your specific state that you've got highly concentrated urban areas and then expansive areas. We've got, I'm just, as an urban girl, when I'm, on a focus group a couple of weeks ago and someone tells me that they serve a community of 250 people, I mean, I'm in a house and there's an apartment building next door. There's over 250 people in there. You know, but I want to sit with that and understand what that means, and that not only 250, but the other 250 people are far away from your 250 people. So understanding the needs, and there's issues of equity there. And so there's a lot of things to kind of pull back. There's a lot of layers. And so we just have to engage in conversation.
Yeah, Anika, I appreciate the way you talked about this idea of expansiveness, right, for the field. I do want to just speak to another area of challenge as we do this work, is that we're not tokenizing people, and that we also realize this is not about checking off a box. It is about fundamentally changing the landscape. The green field, we want the field to be green, and we want every blade of grass, every individual leader to receive what is necessary for them to contribute in ways that are meaningful for the field, the expansive field. Dana, I'll pass over to you.
I can say that I'm not aware of any legal issues. At least, I think I would know. I've been with the agency for 6 years. So there aren't any legal issues, but I am also always conscious of the fact that, preserving diverse cultures is different. And, I make sure to explain the purpose, the origination of this 40+ year program that offers support for, BIPOC artists and art administrators, and why. And so, maybe I've heard, had a couple of questions about whether or not a program similar to Strategies for Success could be offered in some shape or form to rural artists and rural arts organizations. But I haven't heard any type of backlash. Maybe there are microaggressions, and perhaps I'm used to those, and sort of make sure to address those appropriately, according to me. I think that when I think about the fact that the Preserving Diverse Cultures Division was founded in 1979, and the first program that supported it, in support of BIPOC arts administrators, was established in 1980, and we're still working to address some of the same issues. And so I stick with that, with the program. You never know what's going to happen from day to day. So far as who's looking at the program, who's looking at funding for the program, and support for the program. I think that, again, as long as there is internal support from leadership, and that people are listening to what I have to say, from me hearing from my grantees and arts administrators, then this program will keep going and should keep getting funded.
Thank you, the three of you, so much. I'm thrilled to hear that you're not having any legal issues, and there's just power in our voice, and the conversations and the internal support are so important to keep your programs thriving. Eric, you have a question in the chat?
We do indeed. We have a couple questions, but I'm going to start with Martha from Maine. Martha, do you mind unmuting and just asking your question?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So we're trying to take a whole new approach to things, and we've got a long way to go, a really long way to go. But one of the things we've been talking about in general is that a lot of the leaders of our arts organizations are either retiring, are inching towards retirement, and so there's this whole need to build up a cohort of the next set of leaders. And so my question is, given what Maine is, you know, we have maybe 1.3 million people all told, kind of what you were just talking about. There's pockets of populations, and we have, you know, 4 indigenous nations we have, which are mostly rural, and then we have a number of growing BIPOC populations in the southern part of the state. So I'm just wondering, would it make sense? I have no idea what we can pull off regardless, but to have a cohort, to have a training, some kind of development, leadership development program that's for anyone, or do we want to try to create a cohort just for BIPOC folks? And given all of the staff are white, and it doesn't mean that we wouldn't get a, you know, use advisement, use leaders who are of that constituency, but just getting your sense of that would be great.
One thing that I would think about is when you're thinking about which direction you should go to, is that in working to empower and support the development of BIPOC art administrators, everyone has to recognize and respect the cultural differences. And maybe there are some differences in needs. Maybe there are differences in where people are. You have to meet them where they are. I think a benefit of, maybe a benefit of, you know, opening up to everyone is that you'd have the opportunity to establish an environment of respect. So I would just suggest that you think about that, because there's a difference.
Thank you, Dana. Joy, Anika, any thoughts on Martha's question?
I'll start. I'm sure Joy has some comments, but I'll start. Martha, thanks for your question. And you know, I kind of feel like this answer is like a personal answer. So I think I would start with, have you talked to, why are you doing this program? Who have you asked about this program? Who has said that they needed this program? What specifically do folks want? Have you, you know, just been able to be authentic and honest about, here we are as a staff of all white people, and we're thinking about this. We don't know exactly what to do because we're a staff of all white people, but we want to just put it out there and see what y'all think.
Right.
That's what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as Anika said earlier, this work is not performative. You're not doing it to check off a box. You're doing it for a reason. And inviting individuals in to offer what they think, not what you think. And you also, once you extend that invitation, then you have to be willing to listen and shift and change. So if you're not in agreement already within yourselves and within the organization and your leadership that you want to do something and you're willing to risk that, whatever that is, I would say you may cause more harm than good by going down this performative path. Ask yourselves the hard questions of, what do we gain? What do we gain more of? What do we lose? Because some of that loss might be around control, around dominance. And is that the direction you're going to go? And how then do the people you interact with receive the new people you're inviting to the table? So I would say, go for it, but also be very clear with the why you're going for it and the what you want to see different, and being willing to accept what you're seeing as different and be prepared for a glorious new thing. Because Martha, I'm sure that's what you'll find yourself with.
Love that. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, and before you do, I just want to commend you, Martha, for coming out with this question. And, you know, I got a private question asking me what BIPOC meant. You know, so we make some assumptions here. So our apologies for that.
Yes.
Then also our time is short. So and I did respond to that person, but just in case, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. And so I just also want to say, if anyone feels nervous to say something out loud or to write something in the chat, I'm sure that you could private any of us and we would be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. So my follow-up question is just that, like many of you have, we're a public entity, right? So we have our board, which is appointed by the governor, and then we have the staff, and the staff could be like 100% in. Let's go. We're all about change right now. Not that there won't be some, you know, it'd be hard, but the commission level is a whole different story. And I'm just wondering if you have had some experiences. I know some stuff happened in Maryland, I'm thinking, where it shook things up and people didn't like it. So if there's any anecdotal, like what not to do kind of things, that'd be great. And I'll stop asking. I'll stop monopolizing.
So no, Martha, I appreciate your bravery in stepping up and opening the floor for these kinds of questions. So having worked at a state arts agency and having a program that really was focused on communities of color, we were creative in the language. And I think that's finding that creativity in language. I think for those of you from the South, I think the program was called Cultural Visions. And this idea of visions of different cultures coming together. So what's the point? The point is to utilize the creativity that exists within our own state arts agencies and think about how to frame some of this work in ways that are palatable. And let's face it, it's not always palatable. Let's face it, federal dollars do have certain restrictions. And as an RAO, we have some of the same restrictions as state arts agencies do. But ultimately, I think the use of language, how we use language, and also allowing our advocates, those people around us, our networks of supporters, take some of that heat, if you will, and be our voice. We don't have to be the ones literally with our necks stuck out to be chopped off. It's a lot harder to chop off 100 necks than the one. Okay.
And to that point, Preserving Diverse Cultures was established with the assistance of K. Leroy Irvis, who was the first Black Speaker of the House in Pennsylvania. So it takes a crew. It takes a crew of supporters inside and outside of BIPOC cultures to create things and to sustain them.
Dana, thanks so much for sharing this idea that it takes a crew. So a few things that I just have to share, and I try to allude to them in the presentation, that within a field as dynamic as the arts, we have to have an entire network of supporters. And as leaders, and as we're developing new leaders, and again, don't let the term developing get in our way here, that we have to ensure that those networks of support are and those individuals of influence are part of how we nurture, if you will, those emerging leaders. We've got to introduce them to those networks, because you as leaders are leaders of influence, and you have to help transfer that influence, that trust, to the next generation. You cannot hold on to that. As you are doing that transfer, if you will, or offering that transfer, you have to realize that it's not just within the realm of the arts. It is all of those partners, youth services. You name the partner, they're there. Don't be afraid to open those doors. That we cannot be successful as individual islands, but it is truly a pipeline. And as we open that pipeline, we have to equip leaders with the tools for success. And it's not one tool, it's a multitude of knowledge, skills, abilities, and people. Okay, I'll step off my box. I'm sorry.
Joy, that's great. And I think everything that you're saying adds up back to the point of investment, right? This is not this one-time thing, or this is when we commit, we've committed, and we committed to such a degree that we are thinking generations down the line of how the work that we're doing today is going to have impact, right? So what is the investment? What is the investment? Yes, in staffing, but in policy change, other areas that are going to really set up leaders of color for success.
This is a long game. This is not a short game. The arts in and of themselves, we're a new field, 50, 60 years old at most. And many who started in the field without the master's degree in arts administration, they've been doing this work without the master's, let's be honest. And some of them feel like, hey, you young person coming in with your master's, you don't know anything. We've got to lay all of that down, folks. And we have to understand that part of professionalizing the field means that we have to have these academic programs to speak not to the administration side, but as Anika is talking about, the political side, the advocacy side, and let's face it, the social theory side of relationship building, of what I said earlier, followership. Those are the tools of the next generation and the growth of the field of the arts. And we've got to have it. And every one of you on the call, you are in a unique position to take the kink out of that hose, to let that water flow, to nourish the field with every blade of grass you come across.
Thank you so much for your responses. I love the continued word invest. Every time I do something DEI related, I think about my boys who are 17 and 21. They're both rising seniors, one in high school, one at university. And I consider myself paving a path for them the way that my parents did for me. And so whatever I do for them, it's for the community. It helps the community. So I really love lifting up that word invest, because it's not just about us right now. It's about the future of people of color, not just working in the arts, but in the workforce in general, just working and prospering and being promoted and elevated. So thank you for lifting up that word invest. Eric, you have another question in the chat?
I sure do. I think this one is a perennial question we often get when talking about leadership development or talking about engaging with Indigenous and Native tribes. How do you go about identifying and engaging BIPOC leaders and emerging leaders to find out what kind of support is needed from your agency and your program? So how do you make those connections? How do you engage them in a conversation to develop a program that fits them and their needs?
I don't know if Dana wants to jump in, but I'm going to be quick. I think you ask them. It's just really straightforward. Like you ask them. You may not know where to start. I think it's very much a snowball. If you feel like you have no one in your purview, reach out. If you, I mean, you know, at least the three of us, Marisa and Eric, we've got resources. Others here have resources. So we can help you, you know, if that's what you really want to do. But ultimately, it's that vulnerability that you have to bring, as you would in any relationship. You know, what do you need? You know, and who are you? You know, storytelling is so important, right? And allowing the spaciousness, right? I was thinking to say this, get comfortable. This might challenge some of us, but get comfortable saying out loud, white supremacy. Saying it out loud. I'm gonna say for me, 5 years ago, it was a process. So I know for some of you, it may have been or may be a process. And in that, why I mentioned that particular term is its association with urgency. And we may think we want to do this project, we want to get it done this fiscal year, and this is the budget, and da 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 da. Slow down. That's the way, that's institutionalization, systemic racism. That's the way institutions work and how our society has been built. But slow it down. Hello, I'm Anika. I work with, and we're thinking about, and we'd love to know, just like that.
I'll have to say, here in Pennsylvania, Indigenous tribes are not officially recognized, but we still have Indigenous artists and organizations. And part of my work involves traveling the state. Well, you know, the past couple of years it's been virtual, but I engage in a wide range of different cultures through presentations and just talking about preserving diverse cultures division. I have slowly but surely created and cultivated relationships with Indigenous artists and art organizations. I have a couple, and you know, with all of the consciousness that I've had and the work that I've done, I can say I just have a couple of Indigenous art organizations participate in my program in strategies for success, or even community-based engagement, which is another program offered by Preserving Diverse Cultures. And you have to be patient. You have to listen. We're in Harrisburg, and not too far from Harrisburg is Carlisle, PA, which was the location of the Carlisle Indian School. One of my grantees we're supporting some work done by one of my grantees for community-based engagement projects. And it's through the relationship that I've built with this person that I was able to meet just recently a wide range of Indigenous artists that came to the Jim Thorpe days at the Carlisle Barracks. And these are people from as far as Minnesota and Wisconsin, New Jersey, New York, and Virginia. And you just keep cultivating those relationships and listen. And you know, that's the best way that I have found to build upon working with Indigenous populations and sort of getting them to, you know, take a look at our grant programs. And, you know, maybe there's something that matches and meets their needs.
I will only add a very, very short story. South Arts is launching or has launched a fairly significant program for our 9-state region. And part of our process was interviewing and learning from potential grantees. In an hour, I learned more about the needs of tribal communities and even what it means to have federal recognition and the literal handcuffs that are on tribes to receive federal recognition, until it has caused me, and as we develop out our program, ways of, I hate to use the word, but ways of getting around what those handcuffs are, being creative in the approach. But ultimately, it's been about listening and learning. Our programs that serve individual artists welcome any individual to come into our programs. But we're coming up on time, so I'll hand things over back to you, Marisa.
Thank you so much, Joy and Dana and Anika, for sharing your thoughts. We have about 5 minutes left. So I'd like to just sort of close out the program with one question. What do you view as next steps, or where do we need to go with this work?
I will say continuing to support investing in these programs that support BIPOC art administrators, and then investing in within your organization and supporting BIPOC administrators. And like I said before, the best way that this works is if there is buy-in and support from leadership. And one other thing is that BIPOC art administrators, whether you've been in the field for 10 minutes or 1,000 years, everyone needs to support each other, because you gain a lot. BIPOC administrators gain a lot from that support from other administrators too.
I would say be comfortable in not knowing everything that you want to do or that you're going to do. There is acceptance in that ambiguity. White supremacy, white privilege exists in this field. It was not built to include people of color. And so you are all helping to change a system. Step into it and own it and be proud of it. We use the word investing, and I say invest in the individuals, their professional lives, and be vulnerable enough to learn more about the personal and what it means to embody a body that is different than yours. I would say, get out of the way. And I would just end with saying that people of color, we're still people. So we need to be heard, listened to, respected, and trusted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana and Joy. I just want to lift up first what Steve said in the chat. I think those are fantastic lessons learned that can be added on to next steps. And to what everyone else has said, engage in a conversation with someone that you work with about this conversation today. Today, I spent this hour doing X and learning X and hearing X, sharing that, and just let the conversation flow. Like we said, like Joy said, letting that kink come out, but let it flow, let the conversation flow. This is not I'm Black 24/7. This is not a 9-to-5 thing, right? And so just let it flow, be prepared to be uncomfortable. That's part of the process. That's part of the journey. And I saw Marcy had a very tough question in the chat, and I think we might have skipped it, but I know we don't have time, but I just wanted to say, I see you, Marcy, and we can always talk.
Dana, Joy, and Anika, thank you so much for your golden nuggets and your words of wisdom today. I keep thinking about that little blade of grass, and based on your closing remarks, we have to nurture it, we have to water it, we have to feed it, we have to talk to it. I talk to my plants and I feel like they answer back sometimes. Sometimes my plants leaves are dry and they're dying and I don't know what it needs. And so I have to figure that out because I don't know everything about plants. So I'm going to Dr. Google to figure it out, you know, and it's telling me put some coffee grinds in there. So I'm doing that. I'm doing all the things to help nurture it and help it to grow and provide oxygen in my home so that my children and I can be healthy. And that's what, you know, little blades of grass do. And that's what we need to do, you know, as a community for people of color in leadership positions and striving to get to leadership positions. So again, thank you so much. Very grateful for your presence today on the panel. Thank you so much to our guests and your powerful questions. And thank you to NASAA for creating and planning and implementing this program. I wish you a wonderful, safe holiday weekend.